Good evening and welcome to the public work session for Upper Gwynedd Township for May 10th, 2021. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Next on the agenda, item number 3, the roll call. Deanna?
Liz McNaney, President.
Here.
Denise Hall, Vice President.
Here.
Martha Similaro, Commissioner.
Here.
Catherine Carter, Commissioner.
Here.
Ruth Damsker, Commissioner.
Here.
Sandra Zedell, Township Manager.
Here.
Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager.
Megan's having some technical difficulty, so she may not be able to join the meeting.
Lauren Gallagher, Township Solicitor.
Here.
Isaac Kessler, Township Engineer.
Here.
David Duffy, Chief of Police.
Here.
David Brill, Finance Director.
Here.
Van Reeker, Zoning Officer.
Here.
That's everyone.
Thank you, Deanna. The next item on the agenda is the announcement of executive session, and I'll turn it over to Solicitor Gallagher.
Thank you, President McNaney. The board did meet in executive session earlier this evening to discuss matters of litigation, potential litigation, and personnel.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is, see, you couldn't see my mouth was moving and you couldn't hear me. See, I was talking and I was still muted. Anyway, next on the agenda is public comments and concerns. Do we have anybody calling in this evening?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. And with that, then I will turn the meeting over to Township Manager Sandra Zedell. Good evening, Sandra.
Everyone. Thanks, Liz. Just a few things to go over before we get into the hearing. At our next meeting, we'll be recognizing Sergeant Chad Staub for 25 years with the township, and Howard Peanut Quinn for 30 years with the township. So that'll be happening at our next meeting. And now I'm going to turn it over to special counsel. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to call you right now, Jim Garrity.
Okay, we have a continued hearing on the Upper Gwynedd equities matter for conditional use for a daycare facility at the site I guess we all call the Gennardi's site. I went back over the record that was sent to me, and it looks like we just finished the testimony of Mr. Walsh, and Bernadette Kearney, who represented the applicant, was going to bring back a couple more witnesses, and I know she has 3 more exhibits to add to the book that she already gave us. If I don't see Bernadette, but maybe
Jim, it just may take one moment for our digital company. There's Bernadette, and the other people will be joining us now. I see them coming into the meeting room, so it just might take a moment.
Okay.
Maybe Bernadette, once all your people are here, give us a nod that you're all set, but you may still have a few more joining.
I am looking.
I see Mr. Hennigan's here, Mr. Grace is here. Morgan's here. Robert's here. Mr. Walsh is here.
What I don't see is John Wishner.
Yeah, John Wishner and Jeff Bevan.
No, I don't see them either.
Bernadette, I will text them both.
Were they in the meeting room with you, Morgan?
I couldn't see everybody. What I see now is a multitude of what I saw a minute ago. So hard for me to answer.
Oh, there's John Wishner. He just popped up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Jeff's in. Jefferson as well. I see him.
I see them now, yes.
And Bernadette, you want to introduce, we have another person from Guidepost. Maybe you want to introduce that.
Yes. Did you say Jeff? You do see Jeff Bevan? I don't. Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, we see John.
I do see Jeff as well.
Okay, great. Yes, as Robert indicated, as Mr. Hill indicated, we do have another person, and I'm looking for Aaron Hennigan from Guidepost, and he will be able to testify in reference to the security issues that had been raised at the last. So tonight we foresee Aaron Hennigan testifying, Jeff Grace testifying, John Wishner testifying, and a little follow-up with Robert Hill. Not much with Robert.
Call a witness whenever you like, Bernadette.
Yes. I believe all the other witnesses had been sworn in, but Mr. Hennigan had not been at the last hearing. If we could have him sworn in, Mark?
Is Mr. Hennigan your first witness, Bernadette?
Yes, Mr. Hennigan will be the first witness.
Okay, I can do it. I don't know if Mark.
I'm here. I'm just looking
Oh,
for
there.
him. I can't.
Oh.
I know it's,
Yeah, if I speak up, maybe you'll find me more easily. There I am.
If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your full name and spell it, please?
My name is Aaron, E-R-I-N, Hennigan, H-E-N-N-I-G-A-N.
Thank you.
and Mr. Garrity, I don't know if, again, the IT department would be putting the exhibits up on the screen.
I don't remember who did that last time. Oh, there you go. Bingo.
Okay. And if we, Mr. Hennigan's, and I apologize, the three new exhibits were not numbered at the bottom right, but they're right after page 106. And you'll see Mr. Hennigan's CV in that. Yeah, it's probably like 108. Yeah, little. Yeah, there we go. And Mr. Hennigan, can you describe for the board by whom you were employed?
Yes, I'm employed by Higher Ground Education.
And can you briefly describe your educational background and employment history?
Sure thing. So in terms of my educational background, I have a bachelor's in philosophy from the University of California, Santa Barbara, a master's of science and education from St. Mary's College of California, as well as my Montessori teaching credential for ages 3 to 6 years old. Employment history, I've been a Montessori educator for about 16 years. During that time, I've been a teacher, I've been head of school, I've worked in public and charter schools and private schools in multiple positions. And for the past 3 years this July, I've been employed by Higher Ground Education, specifically on the school management side. My current role, official title is Senior Director of School Success. And what I do is I manage a team of regional directors, each of whom then manages a portfolio of schools in a region of the country.
And can you just give a few examples of representative types of projects that you've worked on?
Sure. So I've been with the company for almost 3 years. So I've managed schools that were already a part of Guidepost and existed as part of our company. I've helped work on projects for brand new school openings, greenfields, like the one we're talking about today. I've also worked on acquisition projects where we've taken existing school communities and integrated them into the Guidepost network of schools. Also worked, this includes schools from infants all the way through high school, and also special projects like nanny pods and things like that as well.
And have you previously testified before municipal bodies as to daycares?
Yes, I have.
And can you describe the security protocols for Guidepost and specifically those ones that would be employed at this location?
Sure. So we have a standard set of security protocols, or a health and safety plan that when every school is going through the pre-open process with us, we work with the school leaders, we give them the template, kind of has all of our existing best practices and standards on health and safety and security. And then the school leader takes that template document and goes through it and customizes it for any specific things that are unique or different about their school, so that it is both kind of meeting our internal standards for health and safety and security, but then also is customized that's directly applicable to that specific location. That includes everything from, that plan includes everything from supervision standards, health and safety protocols like sanitization, but also I think more relevant for this call today, kind of specifically security oriented standards. For example, every plan has a process procedure in place for fire drills, for lockdown drills. If appropriate for the location, you'll see information for earthquake drills or tornado drills, things like that. I can talk through some of those specifics in a minute if that's helpful. As part of those procedures and capturing those documents, every classroom has locks on the doors that can be used in emergency situations such as lockdowns. Office spaces as well have those locks that if we need to shelter in place for any reason, if there's an imminent threat on campus, we can lock those spaces, huddle in place, and keep our students safe. Is it helpful for me to go into the fire and lockdown procedures here, or what would you like to get more information about before I talk about some of the other aspects of our security?
You could go through the fire and lockdown right now while we're speaking about it.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so fire drills I think is pretty standard for childcare settings and schools. Every school has evacuation maps posted throughout the school. And so in the case of a fire, students are led out of their classrooms or the spaces they're in by their guides, by their teachers, out of the building into a safe assembly space outside of the school. Depends on the exact location. Sometimes that's a sidewalk, sometimes that's a playground space that has enough distance from the school, sometimes that's a parking lot, depends on the specific location. So pretty standard there, and we wait for the all clear from the fire department before, of course, heading back into the building. Clear lockdown procedures as well. So we actually have procedures for both what we call soft lockdowns and hard lockdowns. So soft lockdown is a situation where, let's say there is some police activity, maybe 3 or 4 blocks away. We hear through the community or even directly from the police, there's something occurring. We would then go into a soft lockdown, which means all the students, if they're anybody outside, would go inside into their classrooms. Of course, entrances of the school would be locked as they normally would be anyways. And students would just kind of go about their business inside the school building, and our administrative staff would be kind of on alert in case the threat level changes in any way. Our hard lockdown is really a procedure for the instance where there's an imminent threat on campus, so a dangerous individual or something like that. Hard lockdown is typically announced through our walkie-talkie communication system by the administrator to the entire staff, so everybody gets that message instantaneously across the campus. They would initiate that hard lockdown drill, which means being in their classrooms, locking the doors, closing shades over windows if they are present, and then sheltering in place in a space in the classroom that cannot be seen from the windows or other entrances into the classroom. It's typically going to be the bathroom space is usually the most kind of hidden because there are usually low walls that they can hide behind. So they would huddle in place in an unseen space until they get the all clear, either from the head of school or from the local authorities. We do practice these drills on a regular basis. So we have a monthly drill practice procedure where every month the school administrative team guide their teachers and their students in practicing these drills. They log those drills every time they practice them, so it's a clear record that these drills have occurred. And then part of the process too is after those drills occur, the school administrative team sits down together and debriefs that process to understand what went well, where did we miss something, where were we too slow, and then they look to incorporate learnings for the next time. So the idea is that we're both getting better and better at executing these things as a group of adults, but also, of course, to make sure that our students, especially our youngest students, feel comfortable with these procedures, so that when they do occur in the case of a real emergency, they're able to go through that process and follow the adults' instructions easily and correctly to keep everybody safe.
And Aaron, can you describe how incoming staff is trained?
Of course. So we want to make sure that every single staff member is completely trained in these procedures. So every staff member goes through a 2-day orientation and onboarding process that's run centrally. That includes all kinds of information, but it does cover health and safety basics and our security protocols as well. And then as part of the on-site onboarding process after those first 2 days, the head of school is then also responsible for orienting every new staff member, again, to multiple things, including these security protocols, so that they're aware and clear about what's expected of them if an emergency were to occur. And then, of course, they participate in those monthly drills as well. So they practice them once they've been trained on their initial onboarding.
And can you describe, are there any cameras at the daycare?
There are. So this has been changing for us over the past couple of years. Every new site now we have cameras built into the classrooms. They're hardwired into the ceilings. It's part of a larger program called Visible Classroom that we use mostly for performance coaching for our teachers, so they can learn to be better and better at their work. But those are also there, and we can use it as a record in case there is an emergency. We're able to reference those and look back at any footage as well. I'll mention, in addition to those classroom cameras, we also have security cameras at the exterior doors at this location, so we can capture any activity at any of those exterior doors as people come and go from the school.
And would someone from the general public be able to open the door and get into the building?
They would not, at least not without substantial effort. Our exterior doors are locked. They have keypad entries that only our staff and parents know. We also, our administrative team are shown how and trained to change those keypad codes whenever a need arises. So if there's any kind of reason to think that it's no longer secure for any reason, they can and do change those keypad codes regularly. So the general public cannot enter without permission, without being let in by an administrator. And then there's a whole process in place where if anybody is entering that's not a parent or a staff member, they have to go to the front desk with an administrator. Their business at the school is kind of confirm and verify. They sign a visitor's log so we can identify them. They show their identification. They get a visitor's badge so as they're walking around the school, other folks know that they're a visitor and that they're there for a specific purpose. So really, it's tightly controlled by the administrative team, and we try to make sure that only those who really need to be there are allowed to be there.
And can you describe the login and logout procedure for parents with their children?
Yep, so we have an electronic sign-in and sign-out system called Smart Care. Parents can have a keychain or a QR code, and they can sign in and sign their child out using our Smart Care system. It's super easy for parents to use, but it also means that we have a great record every single day of when every single student is dropped off, whether or not they're on campus or not. So we have a complete list. We can also access information from sign in or sign out instantaneously online. So if an emergency occurs, our administrators are able to check immediately and see which children are actually present today via this list. So it's really helpful and very accurate in that way. Connected to that, especially for pickup, we have to make sure, of course, that only folks who are authorized to pick up a specific student, child, are allowed to do so. So every parent upon enrollment, they're allowed to designate however many folks they would like to on their authorized to pick up list. That's a list, that's information that's been maintained by our administrative team. And so anybody that's on that authorized to pick up list the parent has shared is allowed to pick up that child. And then what happens is upon pickup, if it's a parent or someone that picks up regularly that the teachers or the administrative staff recognize, they will of course allow that adult to pick up and go. If they don't recognize that person, they will ask them to share their ID, wait while they compare that ID to the authorized pickup list. And if the ID matches and they're authorized via the parent on the authorized pickup list, they will allow that student to depart with that adult. If they're not, we would never release a student to somebody who's not on the authorized pickup list unless they can get a hold of the parent. We can talk live to the parent, or they can give us a verbal or otherwise written authorization for that individual. So only in that way can authorized folks pick up and take children away from the school.
And do you reach out to the fire marshal and local law enforcement? Can you explain to the board how that's done?
Yeah, absolutely. So approval from the fire marshal is required before we can open the building. We have to have the fire marshal's approval to operate that facility. So that happens always and every single time for every single facility that we operate. And it's also part of our standard practice once we are physically in a building. Usually it's our head of school who does this, to call the local law enforcement, usually the closest police station, and let them know. They say, hey, here's who we are. We're a school. We serve these ages of children. We're here. Here's our open date. Here's how big our community is. So that the local law enforcement team knows that we're there and can then help keep us informed, help make sure that we're safe. We don't kind of require anything of them beyond that, but we do want to make sure that they know that our community is there, and especially that we're going to be serving young children. It's important for them to know about us.
And again, as you indicated, the fire marshal would have to approve the school before it could be opened.
That's correct. Yeah.
And can you describe fences and gates used for the playground?
Yeah, I sure can. So I believe at this location, the fences are going to be 6 feet high, solid material. I don't exactly remember what the material is, but I'm sure somebody else on this call can confirm the exact material. Lockable gates, of course, so that they can't be accessed from the outside. Also, of course, with those gates, have to be aware of the ability to exit in an emergency. So they will be equipped with panic hardware, panic bars, so that those inside, if they have to exit, can press those panic bars and exit those gates to exit the school grounds if needed. We also make sure, I don't know if there's too much detail, we also make sure that that panic hardware is protected so that it can't easily be accessed from outside that school fence in any way. So it really is only able to be accessed from inside the school grounds. So that means that nobody who's outside can get in. You can't really see through that fence to see inside at all. You can't really see outside that fence. But of course, if we need to exit in an emergency, we are then able to do so.
And are you aware of any noise issues at other Guidepost daycares?
I'm not. Like I said, I've been with the company for 3 years. I'm not aware of a single instance of complaints of noise. And we have some schools that are, especially in urban settings, that have very, very close by neighbors, separated by a matter of feet in some cases. Especially a location like we're talking about today, they're young children. So they're in small groups, 20, 24 students usually together at a time outside. And it's just kind of gross motor play. So there's no kind of sporting events, loud music, really any of that kind of stuff. So it's really just the sounds of, children playing and laughter and that kind of stuff, which we've never had complaints about.
As you indicated, not all the children would go out at the same time.
Correct. So we stagger the groups based, first of all, on program level. So like, we're not going to have 2-year-olds out there playing with 5-year-olds. So we have our different program groups would usually play in a staggered schedule, so they are not all outside at the same time.
That's all the questions I had of Aaron. If Mr. Garrity or the board had any questions.
Thank you, Bernadette. Are there any questions from the board? No? Any questions from the board? I don't see any hands or.
I have a question, Mr. Garrity.
All right, Sandra.
In regards to this specific school, where would you be thinking of the fire drill loading location being? I think that's part of the board's concerns. In this case would be the safety of the students with the Royal Farms parking lot right there. So did you have an idea of where that might be?
That's a good question. I haven't actually looked at, or I don't know if we've created yet the emergency evacuation plan. I know there's a pretty decent outside yard space. The key there is to make sure that they can get far enough away from the exterior walls. I'm not quite sure the dimensions of that outside space, so I can't speak for certain to that. I don't know if Alon or someone else on this call might have some more information there, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have an exact answer for you today.
Sandra, anything else?
No, that was it. Thanks, Mr. Garrity.
Okay, I have one question, if that's okay. Aaron, you spoke of panic hardware on the fences on the inside. Can the children operate that hardware?
Good question. So yes, theoretically, they have to be at a height that's ADA accessible. So they're typically, I don't know the exact height, I want to say about 3 feet up off the ground. That means that our oldest students, maybe 5, 6-year-olds, theoretically, they could push those push bars. We typically have buzzers or some kind of a sound alarm on those gates so that if they're pressed and opened, it makes a sound, which means that any adults can immediately see why the gate's opening, who's at the gate, to help make sure that there's no unauthorized access or exits by students. I'll add though too, it's exceedingly rare. I think I don't actually know of an instance where a child has exited a gate without an adult without permission. A, because they want to be there, but B, because we also train the students around how to be safe at school. And that includes things like staying with your teacher, not opening doors or gates unless an adult is opening it for you and things like that. So again, while theoretically possible, not something we've ever had issues with.
The board were to see fit to require in connection with any kind of an approval, to require the gates to make a noise if they were opened inappropriately. Would that be a condition acceptable to your company?
I think the answer is yes. I'd want to definitely double check with our facilities guys and see what they've done in other locations there. We could definitely consider it. Yeah, I think that's possible.
I bring that up, Aaron, only because if you're familiar with the plan at all, the play area is going to be relatively close to a parking lot. There's going to be a lot of cars around, and the concern would be for the children's safety if they got out of the fenced-in area.
Yeah, understood. And I'll just add that's you know, a setting that we're not unfamiliar with. We have, as you probably already know, 80+ schools across the country, and many of which are near parking lots or have busy roads nearby. So we are definitely used to maintaining the safety of the students in those settings. Yeah, not new to us.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board whatsoever?
I have a question.
I have a question.
Go
ahead, Martha.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. When the children are in the playground, how many teachers are out there with them? Is it just their teacher, or is it a teacher plus an assistant, so that they're sort of double covered?
Yeah, no, great question. So it depends on the age group. We have internal ratios that we maintain at all times based on the ages. So for what we typically consider infants, which is typically 0 to 18 months, we actually have a ratio of 1 adult for every 3 children. So even on the playground, if those infants were outside, they'd be at a ratio of 1 to 3. What we would typically consider toddlers are about 18 months up to about 3 years old. We function with their minimum ratio of 1 to 6. So 1 adult for every 6 children. Typically those groups are up to 12. So you'd be looking at typically 2 teachers with a group of toddlers, usually a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. And then with our oldest groups, our 3 to 6 year olds, typically a ratio of 1 to 12 in that group. So a group of up to 24 is kind of the typical group size. And again, with 2 teachers at all times. And that's kind of our I said, our minimum ratio. There are also times when there's a third person with those toddler and preschool groups. So oftentimes the ratio is actually lower than that, but that's kind of our minimum ratio that we're at all times.
Thank you.
My question again is around security. You mentioned that you have a lot of your locations near stores and parking lots and things like that, but are any of them specifically around such like a fast food, like a Royal Farms or 7-Eleven, or such a transient in and out population? Like the parking lot is constantly moving, unlike, you know, a mall or a shopping center might not have, you know, cars moving in and out as often as a place such as Royal Farms.
Yeah, we definitely do have locations like that. I'm not super familiar with this particular location that we're talking about today. I've never seen it personally, but it sounds like a busy spot. But yes, we definitely have schools that are in busy locations. I mean, I think about some of our urban school settings that are literally, you know, it's a front on a sidewalk, and then outside that sidewalk is a very, very busy city street with all kinds of passersby on foot, you know, countless cars zipping by. So yeah, definitely not something that's new to us in that way.
Commissioner Carter, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, are there any other questions for this witness? Okay, thank you. Bernadette, next witness.
Oh, I just had one follow-up to Aaron. Aaron, as part of the fire marshal approval, I apologize, I think it was Sandra who asked that. The location where the children would go for the emergency access, that would have to be approved by the fire marshal?
Yes, thank you. And I should have thought that's exactly right, Bernadette. So part of the approval that we need to receive from the fire marshal in any location includes lots of things, capacity and all kinds of other stuff, but it has to include an emergency evacuation plan and assembly areas. So that has to be approved as safe and appropriate by the fire marshal. So and it's probably not in place yet, but we would definitely seek it out, and we would need that approval from the fire marshal before we open. So yeah, thank you, Bernadette. I should have mentioned that.
Thank you. And then the next witness I would have is Jeff Grace.
Hello, everybody.
Bernadette, I forget, was Mr. Gray sworn at the prior hearing?
I believe he was, correct, Jeff?
I believe I was too, a little vague, but
Just swear him in anyway to be safe.
Yep.
sure.
Do you solemnly swear testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And your full name, please?
Jeffrey Grace, it's GeoffreyGrace.
Thank you.
And Jeff, and I apologize, if we could go to exhibit tab 99, this would be Jeff's CV. Jeff, can you just explain for the board who you are employed by?
Self-employed. My firm is called Grace Planning Associates. I've been self-employed now for about 10 years.
And can you briefly describe your educational and employment history?
I've worked, well, let's start.
I apologize, Jeff froze on my screen.
Mine too. Jeff, if you can hear us, we're going to need you to unfreeze yourself.
I did just text him as well.
Okay.
It looks like he may have logged out and will be logging back in, possibly.
Okay, and if that doesn't work, Bernadette, I'm going to ask you to call another witness and he'll figure it out sooner or later.
Yeah, we could go to John Wishner, or if you want to wait a few minutes, or I can go right to John.
Well, if he's trying to sign in, let's give him a little bit of time to try to get back in here.
We're not seeing him dialing in.
Okay, next witness, Bernadette.
All right, John Wishner, you are up. Are you on my screen here?
I am on the call here, Bernadette.
Yes, great. And John, if you give me one moment, let me pull out your.
Has Mr. Witchner been sworn already?
I appeared at the last hearing, but maybe in the abundance of caution, like Mr. Grace, maybe I will be sworn in here tonight.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give it will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And it's John Witchner. Can you swear?
Wichner, Wichner.
Thank you.
And John's CV is exhibit tab 15, page 106, down in the right-hand corner. And John, by whom are you employed?
I'm employed with McMahon Associates in Fort Washington, PA.
And can you describe what you do for your employer?
Sure. The majority of my work
Sorry, John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Foster, if you could go to page 106.
Oh, I apologize. Did I?
There we go. No, they heard exhibit tab 15 and they put in 15 instead of 106, but we're good. Sorry, John.
No problem.
Sandra, if you don't mind, I know John very well, and I think we'll accept him as an expert in the area of traffic planning and engineering.
Thank you.
Thank you. And John, you had previously testified at the last conditional use hearing, and could you just explain your involvement in this project?
Yes, we've been involved since 2016 on this project. We've prepared a traffic study for the project, trip generation comparison, memos and letters, and we're involved during both the conditional use process as well as the land development approval process.
And you prepared the February 16th, 2021 letter attached at exhibit tab 3, which is on page 20 in the right-hand corner. You prepared that letter?
I did.
Okay. And
it's not up on the screen yet, but yes, I did.
And can you describe the documents you prepared in the prior conditional use, which are referenced in the letter? Some of the Board of Commissioner members were not present at the 2018 conditional use.
Sure. Back in 2018, during the conditional use process, we had prepared a number of different documents, one being the Upper Gwynedd trip generation comparison spreadsheet dated August of 2018, which showed the trip generation of various development scenarios of potential development of the site. Back at that point, there were not many known tenants for the development. And so we had analyzed 3 different scenarios of under likely development scenarios for the site. In addition, I also prepared the transportation impact assessment dated September of 2018. That analyzed the most conservative of the 3 scenarios that were identified in the trip generation comparison spreadsheet in terms of the highest density, the largest size buildings, and the highest traffic generators. Since many of the tenants, again, were not known at the time, we felt as though this approach would capture any likely development scenarios with the highest generation approach.
Again, I have, are we able to go to page 20? It's the page 20 down in the right-hand corner. There we go. And this is the letter that we were referencing, John, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I believe if you look at the original traffic impact study had larger buildings than we actually requested and received relief for in 2018, correct?
Correct. During conditional use, as I mentioned, the anticipated building size were shown prior to completing full engineering design plans, and then over the course of engineering and through the land development approval process, the proposed buildings had been slightly reduced for the commercial buildings. Again, our traffic impact study during conditional use was based on the higher square footage than is proposed now. Higher trip generation, and again, that is proposed now. And just as an example, for our traffic impact study for building A was based upon a square footage of 13,200 square feet, whereas now the building size is proposed at 10,620 square feet, roughly a 20% reduction.
And so what we I apologize, can you go to the next page, page 21? So as the end result is that the daycare that was one of the scenarios that we had discussed at the last conditional use hearing, we have better and improved results than as compared to those identified in the transportation impact assessment because it's a smaller size daycare, correct?
Correct. So our traffic impact study based back in 2018 was based upon scenario 3. As you can see, building 1 or building A was 13,200 square feet. It's now 10,000 square feet and change, much like building B, which was anticipated to roughly 14,600 square feet through the land development approval process has been reduced from there as well. So therefore, the results of the traffic impact study based upon higher trip generation is certainly more conservative than the plan that we're looking at today.
And can you review the parking demand analysis? We had discussed the 59 spaces that were previous witnesses have discussed the 59 spaces. And can you just address that?
Sure. The 59 spaces is a calculation based on the ordinance of roughly 5.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet for any use within the shopping center. That accounts for some shared parking, various uses with various times of day where some of those uses are typically busy or less busy. For a daycare center, there are various sources. So let me back up. That's more of a supply number of 59 spaces per the ordinance, which this development meets. From a demand perspective, there are various sources to determine parking demand for daycare centers. We utilize the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, parking generation manual, which suggests that the daycare center would typically demand approximately 40 parking spaces based upon the square footage of the facility. There's the average peak, which would demand about 26 spaces for this site. When I mentioned 40 spaces, that's what we call the 85th percentile. So 85% of all daycare centers would demand 40 or less parking spaces. An alternative source for parking demand calculations identified by the township traffic engineer and based on the number of employees and number of students would suggest 36 parking spaces, and that's based upon again number of students and number of employees. So both numbers, 40 or 36, and even certainly 26, all of those numbers are below the ordinance requirement of 59 parking spaces. In addition, as I kind of mentioned before, with multiple uses on site, this site lends itself to shared parking. Some uses have parking requirements at different times of the day or at different days of the week.
And again, if I apologize, we keep going. If you go to pages 22 and what you were just testifying, John, is there any way to make this exhibit just a little larger to read? Yeah. What you had just testified in reference to the parking demand analysis you see on pages 22 and 23, correct?
That is correct. Starting on page 22 and continuing on page 23.
And if we go to the next page, we'll also address the parking for special events. And can you just briefly touch on that, as other witnesses have also testified in reference to that?
Yes, based upon discussions with the proposed tenant, Guidepost Montessori School, there was, as previously testified to by other witnesses, there is a lot of flexibility in any kind of special events, whether it is on a per class basis or an age group basis. There's also, and it's not part of the traffic engineering analysis, but it's my understanding that there also are lease agreements because of the owner of the shopping center, will maintain ownership of the parcel. The lease does not allow them to operate in a way that would impede other tenants and not overburden other tenants as well. So between the previous testimony that was provided, the information that was provided to us regarding potentially staggering some of those special events, and then also some of the built-in lease requirements, we've seen that special events would not be a problem at this location.
And in the township engineer, Andy Heinrich's letter, he does indicate that in paragraph comment number 2, that what you were testifying in reference to the 36 parking spaces based on parking by the ENO Foundation for Transportation would yield a parking supply requirement of 36 parking spaces, correct?
Correct. That was one of the numbers that I testified to in terms of various sources of parking demand.
And Andy further says this alternative parking calculation based on employment and enrollment confirms that an adequate parking supply will be available for the proposed child daycare center, correct?
Yes, that is listed in the Heinrich and Klein April 9th, 2021 review letter, page 2.
And you agree with Mr. Heinrich's comment in that letter?
His conclusion is similar to mine. Yes.
And then if we go to the next page on the screen, which would be page 24 at the bottom. But before we get to that, John, can you address the timing of the peak AM drop-off and any other further information that you've received from Guidepost?
Yes, based upon information from Guidepost, most students would typically arrive between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. However, we have data from existing Guidepost facilities that show a relatively wide arrival time between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. This is just the reality of daily schedules. Some parents may schedule doctor's appointments for children early in the morning. Some parents myself included, historically have a tough time getting out of the house, maybe running late. Some parents have non-traditional working hours. So as testified to by a previous witness, this facility is not similar to an elementary school where there is, in this location, there is no bell that rings that everyone needs to be on time. There are no late slips handed out if you aren't in on time. And there's also other operational characteristics. Some parents may have multiple children in the school at the same time. Some children may be on a part-time basis, maybe a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, or a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, or some other variation of part-time attendance. So the school does handle 126 students, but certainly because of maybe some of this part-time schedule, not everyone is in the school at the same time.
Apologize. And Elon did testify at the last hearing that guideposts can request staff members to park elsewhere on site if they needed to free up parking for the parents right up against the building or nearer to the building, correct?
That is correct. And again, this site does satisfy the township ordinance of 59 parking spaces based upon 5.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So there is direct control over the employees and maybe where they are directed to park.
And in the T&M letter dated April 9, 2021, number 2, there was a concern as to the internal truck traffic as using the access drive between building A and the convenience store. Can you just touch on that?
Sure. So the use of the drive aisle between the Royal Farms and this building is necessary for vehicles and specifically trucks at some points during the day to access the existing and proposed driveway on Church Road, as well as Summitown Pike. The driveway on Church Road does allow for alternate movements into and out of the site, and specifically allows for visitors to return to points east toward the township building, say on Summitown Pike, since the driveway on Summitown Pike is limited to a right in, right out movement. As was discussed by, I believe it was under Mr. Bevan's testimony, there is also a restriction contained, or a condition of approval contained in the original conditional use approval and decision about limiting the truck deliveries for the Royal Farms. I believe they are restricted from accessing this site from, I believe it's 7 to 9 a.m. and 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Again, those are the kind of the times that are similar to the daycare drop off. So we don't see, because of that restriction that the township put on the original conditional use application, we don't see that mix of parent drop offs and trucks at the site at the same time. And then lastly, I will say that this is somewhat of a rare situation where we can actually evaluate the internal drive aisle in the field. The Royal Farms has recently opened, I think it was last week. I was able to visit the site to assess this drive aisle in operation. So as shown on a plan that was presented at the last hearing, there are tight radii, there are horizontal curves utilized in the plan for this drive aisle. And these kind of characteristics act as a traffic calming, as multiple traffic calming measures. And that was evident, when I did my field visit over the weekend and navigating this internal circulation.
And we were going to have Jeff Grace testify to this first, but if we could go, it would be almost the last exhibit. So probably page 112 or 113. Yes, this exhibit. Thank you. And John, this is one of the newer exhibits, the site plan dated May 4, 2021, prepared by Polar Engineering. And on that site plan, we did indicate the total number of 59 parking spaces, correct?
That is correct.
And we would be able to put out, as you said, indicated, there are some traffic calming just because of how the site is configured today, correct?
Yes, and I was specifically referencing the, I guess, small radii or tight radii at the driveway along Church Road. Tight radii typically leads to a deceleration of vehicles. And then as you enter the site, there's a horizontal curve after that first internal intersection, which a driver would navigate. Again, horizontal curves tend to lead to traffic calming measures through the site. So again, that rare instance where I can actually evaluate the drive aisle in the field, I was able to do so over the weekend, and I felt just based on my normal driving with the tight radii and with the horizontal curves, it lends itself to lower speeds in that area, and that was my experience at the site.
And if need be, the applicant or the developer could add signs that indicate slow, caution children.
That is correct.
And John, in the while we have this plan up on the screen, plan tab 16, I'm sorry, 17. One of the discussions at the prior hearing was the location of the drop off and pickup for the parents. Can you just briefly address that?
Yes, and those are highlighted in blue on this particular plan. And I believe it was Mr. Bevan that testified earlier at the previous hearing. The plan does indicate about 14 parking spaces in front of the building, identified as parent parking spaces, and then additional spaces to the east and west, or plan left and plan right, for employee parking spaces. In the Heinrich and Klein review letter, there was a recommendation that the 14 parking spaces in front of the building be reserved for use by staff, and the drop-off and pickup parking spaces be designated in the parking area to the east. So basically kind of flip-flopping the proposed parking spaces. In laying out the site and identifying parking spaces, it was our goal to have the parents and children as close to the building as possible. This close proximity allows for the shortest route from a parking space to the sidewalk in front of the facility. So getting to the sidewalk as quickly as possible was our goal, and that would provide for a safe pedestrian route.
And John, do you see that in other parking lots where children may be getting out of the car with their parents, such as a Giant or a Target?
We certainly see parents bringing their children to all sorts of different facilities, whether they be retail facilities, restaurant facilities, things like that. Very rarely does a parent get to park right in front of the building. Those are typically reserved for handicapped parking spaces or things like that. So many times in other facilities, they're parking in the larger parking field, which would then require parents and children to walk through the entire parking field to get to the building. We had felt that that there was a goal to park as close to the building as possible. Again, it allows for a parent and child to walk from their car directly to the sidewalk right in front of the school.
And John, in your professional opinion, is the lot comprised of sufficient area for internal circulation of employees, contractors, suppliers, patrons, guests, and customers?
Yes, it is.
And in your professional opinion, is the property suitable for the proposed use with respect to whether the use would materially increase traffic congestion on the streets?
Yes, and that's based upon the original traffic impact study, which is based upon a higher density of the site. And specifically this particular building. And that traffic study concluded acceptable traffic patterns and access for driveways. Here, with a roughly 20% reduction in square footage for the building, and therefore approximately 20% reduction in trip generation, the results of the traffic impact study are conservative and improved in this particular situation.
And in your professional opinion, is there adequate access arrangement in order to protect streets from undue congestion and hazard?
Yes, based upon the traffic study that was approved during the conditional use application.
That's all the questions I had of Mr. Wichner.
Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have one, Jim.
Go ahead, Martha.
Thanks. I understand that there is no specific drop-off times for the children, but is there any data that shows what the peak time would be for the most children to go to school? Like, is it between 7:30 and 8 or 9? Is there any kind of data that you have?
Not specifically the hour within that time period. The ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, typically looks at morning hours between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. And then they take the 4 consecutive 15-minute intervals. So it could be 7:45 to 8:45, 7:15 to 8:15, and they come up with what their peak hour is. They don't publish what that actual peak hour is, but they do establish trips related to that peak hour.
But Montessori doesn't have any kind of data that shows when the most children are dropped off at their schools?
Not data available to me specific to a Montessori school.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other commissioner? Sandra?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, I have a couple minor things, John, if you don't mind. John, the ITE manual gives you a recommendation, I guess, on parking spaces based on square footage. Does the square footage equate with any number of children for a daycare facility?
The ITE doesn't equate square footage to number of students. That's in my experience, that's more of a licensing equation, where from a state licensing perspective, and I'm starting to get a little bit out of my area of expertise here, Mr. Garrity. But from a licensing perspective, I imagine that there is a square footage per child. So, and certainly, taking into account bathrooms, play areas and things like that. But I guess ITE doesn't make that equivalent calculation on student per square foot.
Okay, and I wasn't talking about the building itself. I was just wondering if the parking assumptions that you went over, the number 40 and the number 36, were based on any particular number of children.
The second data point of 36 spaces was related to number of children and number of employees. So 126 students and call it 23 employees did then create the calculation of 36 parking spaces for the school.
And is that a calculation that the treatise that was consulted recommends for the entire day, the morning rush, the middle of the day, and the evening rush? So that's the number 36?
That is the peak. That is the peak demand over the course of the day, and that would typically occur between that 7 and 8:30 time frame. A little bit less in the afternoon because they do have certainly an extended peak time pickup depending upon work schedules.
Okay, and the 59 parking spaces that you mentioned is with regard to shopping centers at 5.5 and has no relationship whatsoever to a daycare. Is that correct?
The 5.5 spaces per thousand was the ordinance requirement for, my understanding is the ordinance requirement for this particular shopping center under the ordinance.
Right, regardless of use.
Regardless of tenant, I'll say that.
It's a shopping center calculation, not a daycare calculation.
I'll have to defer to Ms. Kearney for the actual way the ordinance is written.
Okay, no problem.
I would agree with you, Mr. Garrity. It's a shopping center, the 5 point, yeah.
Okay, so the zoning ordinance for the permitted uses within the shopping center recommends 5.5 per thousand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have. Are there any other, Ruth, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. In Pennsylvania, I know that there's state licensing for daycare centers, And they have like Keystone stars, and I think there's 1 star, 2 star, up to 5 stars. I don't know whether you have applied for that or how that works with this new daycare.
It's a little bit out of my area of expertise. I may have to allow a different witness to answer that question.
Okay, if you could get back to us, that would be great.
Oh, you know what, John? I have one other question. Do you see on the plan that's up on the screen? I hope you have the same plan, the blue parking spaces.
Yes.
Right in front of the building. And they appear to back up to parking spaces behind the store. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's sort of a parking aisle.
It would be what I'll call a double loaded drive aisle or double loaded parking aisle between the two buildings. I will say the door to the convenience stores in the front of the building or facing Summit-Town Pike. So I would the Royal Farms has not been in operation for more than a week or so, but typically, again, vehicles looking to park near front doors of buildings that they're going to.
Yeah.
The rear of the Royal Farms does not have a door associated with that side of the building.
I have a question. One comment actually, because I was out there this weekend looking it over, and they do have a door in the rear.
That can be.
Yeah, there's a door in the back of Royal Farms.
There's a man door.
I'm sorry.
It's a man door, not the larger doors, but there is a man door.
Correct. But it is a door because when I was there, people were going in and out of that door as they come off of Church Road. They're driving right into the driveway there and parking in the back parking lot there.
So that's permitted access, not a fire access.
I guess.
Okay. I guess my question, John, just to go back to that very same area, is whether there's any additional width right there between the front door of the daycare and the back door of the convenience store, since there is parking on both sides.
Well, in order to provide a walkway in front of the daycare center, a walkway in the rear of the Royal Farms, the adequate parking stall dimensions, I don't see any other additional width. And in fact, many times from a traffic calming perspective, we don't want to have that drive aisle too wide. With a wider road, wider drive aisle, you start to pick up speeds. And so, the width, between the width, the horizontal curvature, and the tight radii, it does lend itself to traffic calming measures.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, would you say it's a fair statement that most of the drive aisles on the site are the same width, or are there any that are more? It looks to me, for example, like between the front of the convenience store and the canopy, that drive aisle looks a little wider.
That drive aisle is a little bit wider. I believe, and again, I was not involved with the development of the site layout from a use and regulation standpoint. I believe there may be some requirements for safety requirements for separation between buildings and gas canopies. That drive aisle is a resultant of some of those separation requirements between the gas facilities and the building.
Understood. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Are there any other questions from the commissioners or staff? Okay. Bernadette, have you located Mr. Grace?
I am here, and my deepest apologies for that. A year of Zoom, and this is the first time that's happened.
No problem, sir.
Okay. Mr. Grace, I apologize. I forgot where we were with you. Oh, I think you were.
I think I froze at my employment history and my educational history.
Yes. Can we go back to page 99? Okay. And Jeff, yes, can you just describe for the board again who you are, what you do,
Okay.
and what AICP stands for?
Okay. AICP stands for American Institute of Certified Planners. I am certified under that program with the American Planning Association. I have a degree from Arizona State of a Bachelor in Science and Planning and a Master in City Planning from University of Pennsylvania. I've worked in planning consulting for about 22 years now, mostly in Montgomery County, some in Delaware County, a little bit in Bucks County. About 10 years ago, I opened my own firm and I'm a sole proprietor. It's me and only me. And currently, a lot of the work I do is with municipalities. My main client at this point is Upper Providence Township in Montgomery County. I'm their zoning officer. I work in their office as a private consultant.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
I just want to offer the option, Bernadette, that Mr. Grace can call in.
And Jeff, if you can hear us, Morgan, are you able to text him that maybe he could just?
I did just text him, yeah, and he was fine the whole time John was testifying, but I am texting him right now.
Morgan, the call-in information should be on the invite that you guys got. That may be easier.
Yeah, let me open that up right now.
And actually, Mr. Garrity, if we wanted to go to Mr. Hill while we get Mr. Grace back, we could do
Oh,
that.
it looks like Jeff is back.
Oh, yay.
Jeff, it looks like you're muted, maybe.
There we go.
There we
Sometimes
go.
it's not helpful to have a whole system. I can only use the Wi-Fi with a small laptop. So.
Oh, I found you again. Okay.
Okay.
You were indicating, I believe, that you were the Director of Planning and zoning officer. At Upper
I'm the
Providence
zoning
Township.
officer and the Director of Planning for Upper Providence Township in Montgomery County as an outside consultant, but in their office 95% of the time. Most of that work is managing the land development process, ordinance compliance reviews, reviewing plans, rewriting zoning, working on zoning, things like that.
And land development plans, correct?
Yes, land development plans.
And have you previously testified before municipal bodies?
I have, including Upper Gwynedd in front of their zoning hearing board in 2016. It's been a wide variety of special exceptions, variances, and it's mostly Montgomery County again, East Norton, White Marsh, Montgomery Township, a couple in Warrington and in Delaware County.
And have you previously been accepted as an expert witness before municipal bodies?
Yes, I have.
And what type of expert witness?
As in land use and planning.
And Mr. Garrity, I'd like to offer Mr. Grace as an expert in land use and planning.
Okay, are there any questions from the commissioners on Mr. Grace's qualifications only? Hearing none, we'll accept Mr. Grace as an expert in the area of land use planning.
And Jeff, you were present at the last hearing and at this current hearing and heard the other witnesses testify, correct?
Everything but most of John's. I missed a little bit in the very beginning. So.
Okay. And what did you review from the 2018 conditional use hearing?
I read the testimony of Charlie Guttenplan, my predecessor on this application, the conditional use decision, the application. I reviewed the plans from 2018 and the current plan set in front of us.
And you're, yes, and you're familiar with what we have,
Yes.
The applicant has filed today. And have you been to the property?
Yes, I have.
And can you just briefly describe, and Mr. Bevan has gone through this, the zoning and size of the property?
Yes, it's zone C commercial and it's about 4.5, a little bit over 4.5 acres.
And what are the surrounding uses?
It's generally commercial in nature, some multifamily to the north of the site.
And are you familiar with the history of the property?
I am. I did live in Lansdale for a number of years, so I drove by the site quite frequently when it was a Gennardi's. I realized that Giant had bought it during the process of when they bought everything from Gennardi's. They closed it. The site became unused or underdeveloped for a number of years. It was left derelict, and I know Mr. Hill's been working on the redevelopment of the property now for a number of years.
And the applicant's requesting a conditional use pursuant to 195-22A9B for a daycare for children, correct?
Yes,
And we're also requesting further relief as required by paragraph 3K, daycares for children or seniors as set forth in the conditional use order of November 19, 2018.
yes,
And have you reviewed the C commercial district regulations?
yes. And specifically section 195-22A9A, which requires it's a multiple principal uses on a single lot.
And is this a single lot?
Yes, it is.
And what are the proposed uses for the property that you're aware of?
Well, we know the Royal Farms in front that I understand has recently opened. I wasn't sure of the date, but as John testified, it is opened, which has 8 gas pumps and 16 fueling positions. The proposed daycare we were discussing tonight. And as Mr. Hill testified previously, the other tenants in Building B will be a mix of commercial uses.
And reviewing the criteria set forth in section 195-22A9A for multiple principal uses on the lot. In your opinion, is the lot comprised of sufficient area for the internal parking and circulation of employees, contractors, suppliers, patrons, guests, and customers?
Yes, I think as Mr. Bevan testified, that the plan's compliant with all the dimensional requirements of the township zoning ordinance.
And is the lot comprised of sufficient area for the operation of the requested principal uses?
Yes, as noted by Mr. Bevan, there's been no dimensional relief requested.
And can you address whether the proposed uses are compatible and not conflict?
Yes, based on my experience reviewing plans, land development applications, and other items like that, these uses seem generally compatible. I think the potential conflicts with the Royal Farms are mitigated by, admittedly, they're mitigated by the road separating the two uses. I think with the main entrance of the Royal Farms being on the opposite side, as we were just talking about, and with the parking for the school employee and drop off almost primarily being on the opposite side of this main drive aisle, it really adds to the separation. I think if we were looking at that plan, we could see the crosswalks too that separate the uses out. Admittedly, the situation is unique. We looked for a lot of this type of use, and we looked all over Montgomery County and really couldn't find something like it. But unique, I don't think means dangerous. And from my standpoint, the layout of the parking lot and drive aisle do not have any more conflict potential than any other parking area in other shopping centers. This is what you could consider a modern project. It's a village shopping center. It's tight, as Mr. Wichner testified to. The curvature of the road will slow it down. There's some traffic calming, things like that. The layout of this parking lot is not what you're going to get at a Wegmans, a Giant, a Target. And I really think it because it's a tight development, it adds to the traffic calming and the safety of it. I think it will create a safer environment.
If we could actually go, it's probably like 2 more pages down. We'll go back to that plan that we had up. Oh, I apologize, a little further than that. Yes, there we go. Is there any way to make it just slightly larger? Great. And Jeff, can you testify as to what we're seeing on this plan, which is exhibit tab 17?
What the colors show, the green is the pavilion or the playground area. The red are the employee parking spaces. Blue are designated as student drop-off spaces. And orange, as we've talked about based on the previous discussion, are really spots that are easily accessible and can still be considered drop-off spaces. I think most of the orange is within a close walking distance. Obviously, there's a crosswalk there for portions of it. It's close enough that if for some reason all of the front spaces were taken up, you would still have extra parking and adequate parking for the drop-off and the peak times, as Mr. Wichner testified to.
And you were part of the conversation with showing where the additional spaces were marked in yellow to make the total of 59 parking spaces shown, correct?
Yes.
And is the developer proposing a residential use?
No, he is not.
And does the overall parking meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, it does. I don't want to rehash what Mr. Witcher just testified to, but I feel it does. It meets the ordinance and meets the requirements for a daycare and this use.
And exhibit tab 9, you don't have to go there. I just wanted to point out that was the exhibit that we had talked about for the daycare parking comparables chart, where it was figured out based on the shopping center requirements, 59 spaces are required. And that if we went to the daycare calculations, 55 spaces were required, correct?
Correct. And what you'll see in a lot of the daycares in the area is they're based on more of a use that, because the way the commercial district was written in 2018, you could only have one use on a C-zone property. So naturally, there wouldn't have been daycares with other uses. And I think that creates, you know, this creates a better parking field, a better parking situation.
And I think one of the questions that had been raised, this exhibit tab 9 was where we show, again, what other daycares in Upper Gwynedd Township have for parking, just to show parking count, not
Right.
in relation. Okay.
Correct.
And as you had indicated in 2018, it was only until 2018 you could have more than one use on a commercial lot.
Correct.
And noise was raised as an issue. Can you address that? And I think that would be our next exhibit.
Yes. The noise from this client, from this land use, isn't going to be any more than, you know, it's probably going to be less than most others. You may have some outside noise at the time, but again, it's during the day. The apartment is additional. It's about 60 feet away from the property line. The building is 35. The play area is the closest. The upper left corner there is 25 feet. Most of the play area is 35 feet or 30 feet away. You have a high fence. You have a lot of landscaping. I think we'll get to that exhibit here in a minute. A lot of landscaping back there to buffer the noise. I really don't think that the noise would carry. And even looking at your noise ordinance, there isn't a specific criteria for noise at certain distance away from a site, specifically play noise or just human noise. There is obviously some mechanical noise and other music, things like that, but nothing that's just kids playing.
Actually, if we could go to the next, yes, it'll be 116 probably, not this one, but the next one, yes. So can you describe what we're seeing here, which is exhibit tag 18?
Yes, this is the site again. You can see the green that's got the play area with the fence. And then if you zoom into the sort of the top third of it, you can really see the landscaping. The landscaping along the top there, the smaller trees, the smaller dots along the property line are planted now. I think the rest of the planting will be going in as construction continues in this site to really buffer out the two. And again, then you have trees on the other side of the property and the parking lot of the apartment complex.
I think you had indicated the apartment building is probably about 90 feet from the daycare.
Okay, I have 60 in my notes, but again, that number was provided to me, so.
Oh, I apologize, but I think you had indicated 30 feet to the property line and an additional 60 feet to the apartment building.
Yes, I see what we're doing here. Yes, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you review section 195.27.1 conditional use standards?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and can you discuss the suitability of the property for the use desired?
I think the property is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the district, of the conditional use standards. The zoning of the site is commercial. The use daycare for children is specifically named as a conditional use. The site is compliant with all applicable zoning regulations as we've discussed, and it complies with the dimensional requirements. It fits so well with the existing zoning language, it can only be considered consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the commercial district.
And is there any purpose or legislative intent as part of the C commercial district?
No.
Is there any purpose section set forth for chapter 195 zoning?
Yes, 195-1. The purpose is the chapter is enacted to promote, protect, facilitate public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And then, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
195-2, the interpretation is in interpreting and applying the provisions of this chapter, they shall be held to the minimum requirements for the promotion of health, safety, morals, general welfare of the township.
And in your opinion, is the property suitable for the requested conditional use of multiple uses on a lot, and specifically the proposed daycare?
Yes.
And is the proposed daycare consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, based on the size of the proposed school in relation to the site, conformity with the applicable zoning regulations.
And one of the considerations of a conditional use is to determine that the proposed change shall not substantially injure or detract from the use of neighboring property or from the character of the neighborhood, and that the use of the property adjacent to the area included in the proposed change or plan is adequately safeguarded. Can you address that?
I can. I think the surrounding zoning includes limited industrial, a couple residential districts, and the B business district. The use of a daycare is complementary to any of those uses in those districts and will not detract from the character of the surrounding neighborhood. The site prior to the buildings was abandoned and empty and was even before that, it was a commercial site of the same intensity of uses of this development, not just the daycare. This development cleans up that eyesore and creates a safer environment. Given the plan that now shows buffering from the adjacent apartment building, which it didn't before, I think it only enhances the character of the neighborhood and does not detract or injure.
In your opinion, will the requested conditional use serve the best interest of the township, convenience of the community, and where applicable, the public welfare?
Yes, again, it's cleaning up the derelict site, protecting public safety, and providing the convenience of daycare in a school adds positively to the public welfare.
And one of the considerations is the effect of the proposed change upon the logical, efficient, and economical extension of public service facilities such as public water, sewers, police and fire protection, and public schools. Can you address those?
In the previous conditional use notes of testimony, and as our engineer testified previously, the site will be on public water and sewer. The police station is about half a mile from the site, and the fire company is just over a mile away. From a planning standpoint, both agencies are well within an adequate distance to respond effectively. The building will have to comply with the building code. And again, I don't want to get into an area that's not mine, but one could assume that the sprinklers may be required and other safety measures will be required. This specific use will not have any impact to the school district. If anything, this use could be considered a benefit to the school district for the education, the training that the kids will get. And that's beyond the financial benefit of the additional tax income for the school district.
And in your professional opinion as a land planner, is the property suitable for the applicant's requested multiple principal uses on a lot?
Yes, based on the size of the lot, the compliance with the zoning ordinance regulations, and the location within the township.
And in your professional opinion as a land planner, is this property suitable for the applicant's requested daycare for children?
Yes, based on the configuration of the lot, overall size of the development, and the provided parking, it's suitable for the requested use.
That's all the questions I had of Mr. Grace.
Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions from the commissioners? Sandra, anything from you? You can just shake your head, Sandra.
No, thanks, Jim.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bernadette. You promised us Mr. Hill. Is he next?
Yes, just briefly, Mr. Hill, you recall you were under oath at the last hearing?
You're muted, Bob.
Yes, I do. I realize I'm under oath.
Okay. And can you just briefly, at the time you were telling the board at the last hearing about the Royal Farms, and is it open?
Yes, it opened up last Thursday.
And we had received a fire marshal review letter dated April 13th, 2021. Can you confirm that the fire marshal reviewed or spoke to your architect about that occupancy that's listed in there?
Yes, they spoke prior to the last meeting, and confirmed, our architect confirmed with the fire marshal will meet all building codes, and there was no issues that he saw.
And then as Mr. Grace has testified to, and I believe Mr. Bevan, can you confirm that there will be sprinklers in the daycare building?
There will be sprinklers in both the daycare building and what we call Building B.
Okay. And can you confirm that the landscaping, I think there was, Mr. Bevan may have testified, and Mr. Grace just did, Mr. Bevan had testified that the landscaping was to be installed. Can you describe where we are with the landscaping being installed?
All the landscaping has been installed except for, you'll see on that plan, a few trees adjacent to building, the guidepost building and Building B. They will obviously be installed when that curbing and that protection is installed. All the perimeter, all the buffer, all the stormwater, that's all been installed.
And I believe Mr. Hennigan had testified that the fencing will be solid 6 feet in height. And can you confirm that?
Yes, that is correct.
And I believe you had indicated vinyl also, correct?
That is correct.
And can you just briefly confirm the location of the dumpster and whether that is part of the lease?
There's a dumpster location on that plan just to the right of the green playground area and just below the stormwater basin. That's a dumpster that will be shared by the tenants in both buildings to the extent they need it.
And can you briefly describe how you, as the owner of the property, will handle special events for the daycare?
Well, all the leases in this location and in any of our center are written so they cannot overburden the common area. They can't disrupt the operation of the other tenants or interfere with the common areas. That would be a legal default under the lease.
And Robert, again, you don't sell your centers, you keep and manage them, correct?
That's correct.
And is Royal Farms aware of the condition in the conditional use as to the timing of deliveries, which is condition number 6?
Yes, they are.
And I believe you had been asked by one of the commissioners to check if Royal Farms had other places that have daycares. Can you address that?
Yeah, we were actually in their offices maybe 2 weeks ago. We met with the president and their director of real estate. They do not have any daycare, any other uses, but they think it's a good complementary use and they're excited about the use in terms of they see themselves as a benefit to the staff and the parents visiting. And they operate in a lot of multiple-use environments, other retail, office, hotels, or things like that. So they don't see any conflict and they're excited about the use.
And Robert, when Mr. Bevan had been testifying about the field change, you had wanted to make a comment and we had indicated you had to wait till we recalled you. What did you want to comment on at that time?
Well, we're obviously trying to get the project shovel in the ground this summer. So we just wanted to clarify or request that this would be, since the changes to the parking are very, very minor, that this could be approved as a field change by TNM's field inspector, as opposed to requiring a revised land development or something like that. We just want to be clear on the process. Our goal is to, finalize these approvals with the town, start and complete the architectural so we can get under construction, as soon as possible.
That's all the questions, follow-up questions I had for Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Bernadette. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, Mr. Hill, I have a couple that I would never permit anyone else to ask you, but since I have a microphone, I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay, Jim.
All right. Is the stormwater facility in, I'll call it the plan upper right, is that a rain garden or a basin?
I probably had Jeff answer that question, Jeff Bevan from Bowler, as to it has, I believe it has rain garden features, but to be honest, Jeff, maybe if we could have Jeff Bevan answer that question.
Is he on the
He
call?
should be.
Yes, I am. Yeah, Jeff Bevan with Bowler. That is a rain garden.
That is a rain garden. So is there a detention facility underground then, Jeff?
We have detention facilities located in the center of the site underground and up along Sumneytown Pike underground.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Hill, if I could just go back to you.
Mhm.
Do any of your leases that you have so far, sir, prevent you from permitting the designation of any parking spots for just one user, at least Monday to Friday?
I would say, except for the Royal Farm leases, the other leases do not. The guidepost lease, which we are finalizing right now, is requesting the parking along the building in that blue area that you saw before. I can't designate employees to park in the Royal Farms area, for example. That's a definite.
Okay.
I'll just stop at that.
Okay, so if the commissioners were to see fit to grant the relief you have requested, but request that you or condition that relief on some specific designation, at least Monday to Friday, of certain parking spots for certain uses related to the daycare, that is something that we might be able to accomplish?
Well, I think we probably ought to dig a little deeper into what you're thinking. I mean, a shopping center functions, with a turnover of spaces, and the question becomes, how would we police that, and what would our remedy be? I mean, we, like all strip shopping center owners, don't have staff on site, so for the customer parking for the guidepost, obviously we're encouraging that, but we would have no way to practically police that. And so I don't know how we would enforce it would be the difficult part I could see.
Understood. Well, I was just thinking, among other things, that if all those spaces, for example, in front of the daycare that were in blue, are being used by people who want a nice chicken sandwich, that could be an issue.
But it could be, yeah. I mean, I think, it's not unusual to designate a few spaces for customers or stuff like that. You typically don't take a center and carve up the spaces in large degrees, again, because it needs some flexibility. But again,
understood. I mean, the whole 5.5 per thousand is premised upon shared parking.
That's correct.
I don't have anything else. Bernadette, do you have any other witnesses?
No other witnesses, but I think Ms. Damsker had asked a question, and I don't know if Elon or Aaron could answer that question.
Which was?
About the state licensing, that they have a program called Keystone Stars, and all daycare centers based on, and it's all kinds of regulations and things, that if you get teachers who have higher certifications, that may increase, from a 1-star to a 2-star. So all of our daycares, some of them have 0 stars, but I mean, it deals with education and students and teacher to child, how, what the regulations are. And I didn't know whether that Montessori had applied for that state licensing. I assume that they have to have some kind of something from the state. But there is the Keystone Stars, which a lot of parents look at, because the more stars that they have more confidence that there is, the teachers, like I said, have a higher education.
Bernadette, do you want to direct that question to one of the witnesses?
And I was seeing if, Aaron, I see Aaron, he's there. Aaron, are you able to address that?
Yeah, I think partially at least. I'm happy to do my best to answer that. So I'm not familiar with Keystone Stars in particular, but as we have in every state, I will be pursuing licensing by the state licensing body, as we would have to be able to open our doors and serve children. And certainly if that star rating is a part of their system, we would be we would be participating in that as well. We're not unfamiliar with that. There are other states that we function in that have something similar. North Carolina, for example, has a similar system of giving, I believe it's stars to schools as well. I think it's in New York City where they do like a number rating kind of reference for parents. So systems that we're familiar with, and presumably if it's kind of a part of the licensing process and it's built into being a licensed facility, then yes, we would be of course happy to participate in that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who has, well, I don't think there were any parties, but is there anyone who wishes to make a statement for or against this particular application who has not been a witness? Okay. Bernadette, do you want any closing remarks?
And Mr. Garrity, I will keep it brief because I know you have a long agenda, or the township has a long agenda. As in 2018, we believe we have met the conditional use requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance for multiple uses on a lot, and your general considerations set forth in the conditional use ordinance section of the zoning ordinance. As we had indicated in 2018, and Mr. Wishner had testified to, daycare was one of the scenarios that we have looked at. And because we have reduced the size of the daycare building, I believe we have shown that the traffic, is better than what we anticipated in 2018 because we have reduced the size of the building. And in 2018, the Board of Commissioners did grant the conditional use based on all those criteria. We recognize that in 2018, you asked us to come back if there was a daycare for seniors or children. We're back in front of you for the daycare for the children. We believe, as Mr. Wishner has indicated, because if you drive out there, and I did drive out there Saturday, as did John, I think, or I drove there Sunday. This isn't set up as a raceway. And as John had indicated, when you go in front of other townships and things like that, they do want narrower lanes to make it not a raceway. And we want the children closest to the door. So we do believe that having the parents park in front is the best way to get them safely inside the building. As you'll see, and I go to the Giant in my local neighborhood, they put up signs for closest, other than the handicap parking, closest to the door for parents with children because they want them that close. And as Mr. Grace had indicated, this is type of the modern village concept. And what you see is that we're now having different uses in one place. That's the wave of the future, these types of village shopping centers. And as Mr. Grace had indicated, as with any place that you go to, a Target, a Giant, or anything like that, the closer you are, the safer it is to get that child in the door. So as Mr. Grace had indicated, it's unique but not unheard of. And we do believe we have met your standards for those conditional use, and that the uses there are compatible and will not conflict. And I did want to point out that as Mr. Wishner had indicated, the guideposts had given us information that the daycare, unlike an elementary school, does have an extended time period to drop off the children. And I think Mr. Wishner had indicated this. You're not late if the child's not marked tardy. You're not late. You can drop your child off during that extended time period. Take your child out at a different times because it is a daycare. So we do believe that this would be compatible with the Royal Farms and the other tenants. Also, this is a use that will not be held in the evening, won't be there on the weekends. So we have that consideration also, that, and this use won't be operating on the weekends or late into the night. And we do believe it's compatible and will not conflict. And we would ask that you grant the conditional use and that Mr. Hill can continue to develop the center and revitalize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. One very small housekeeping item. I'm going to assume that you moved for the admission of all your exhibits.
All the exhibits, yes, Mr. Garrity.
All right, and hearing no objection, we'll accept those exhibits and take them into consideration. And the municipality's planning code, as you know, requires the board to render a decision at a public meeting within 45 days of tonight's hearing, and we will discuss this application and fulfill our legal obligation under the MPC. And I'm guessing, Sandra, that we would probably do that at one of the next meetings of the board.
I think that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to close this hearing and thank everyone for.
Jim, might I have an opportunity for a couple of comments?
Yeah, if you want to, Andy, I had put in your letter and I had told Bernadette that we were going to use your letter, and that's probably why she did not cross-examine you. So you can certainly make a few comments, but Bernadette's going to certainly have the opportunity to cross-examine you if she wishes.
No problem. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents about the location of the parking, the difference between the blue and the red on the plan, and who uses which parking spaces. My thinking had been to move the staff parking in front of the building in the location where the heaviest traffic volumes will be, and move the drop off to the side of the building in a sort of a semi-enclosed parking area, which will not have any through traffic and probably mostly be used by the daycare center in any event. But also keep in mind that the turnover of the parking spaces. When an employee arrives in the morning, they're going to pull into a space and they're virtually going to occupy that space the rest of the day and leave whenever their shift is over or at the end of their work day. If it's a parent coming in, that parent's going to come in and 5 to 7 minutes later, they're going to leave. And then they're going to be replaced by another parent and then another parent and another parent. So with all that other activity that's going on in that congested parking circulation aisle, you're going to have in and out traffic in those spaces in front of the building on top of the traffic across the street at the Royal Farms. So my thinking is just that it's going to be a congested area, and that it might be, in this case, safer to have the drop-off pickup activity occur to the side of the building where there's a lot less activity. And then the parents have to walk the children down the sidewalk to the front of the building, regardless of where they're parked on site. And then the only other comment that I had was that at the southeast corner of the building, there is a crosswalk across the circulation aisle and a curb ramp. And that ramp seems to indicate that the sidewalk is going to go into the play area, connect to the sidewalk around the building, and then come back out. So I don't know if there's 2 gates there or what, but the bottom line is, my feeling is that you need a sidewalk to connect the sidewalk in front of the building to the small little parking area off to the side there with about 9 parking spaces. That curb ramp needs to be redesigned accordingly, and a curb ramp needs to be provided into that parking lot as well. So those are the 2 things that I just wanted to add for the record.
Thank you, Andy. Bernadette, anything?
No, and those I recognize that those were Andy's comments that were set forth in his review letter dated April 9th.
They are. Anyone else? Okay, now I'm going to close the record, and we will render a decision at a public meeting within 45 days. And I'm also going to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. We will just wait a moment or two.
Too, it means it's in the right spot. So it might just be a little, the medication just irritating the brain a bit.
Okay, we'll just give it a minute or two for people. I think we had all of our visitors leave from what I can see on the screen. So Lauren, I know that Jim left, but did we need a motion to close the public hearing, or is it okay that he just announced?
A motion to close the public hearing would probably close out the record then.
Okay.
So do we have a motion to close out the meeting, the hearing? I'm sorry, not the meeting, not yet. We have a lot to do.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any public comment? Any additional board comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes so have it.
Great, thanks, President McNeely.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have a financial report from our Finance Director, Dave Brill. Hi, Dave.
Hey, everybody. Let me get right into it. Could someone bring up the presentation?
I'm not sure if that was sent to Foster Digital or not, but Foster
Okay.
Digital.
I do not have that presentation.
Okay. Okay. Can you access it on our website or?
Yeah, I can find it.
No, not you, Dave. Foster Digital.
Oh.
It's item 11 on the agenda. I don't know if that's possible. You can just get started.
Could I share my screen or?
No, you can just get started. You're not going to be able to share your screen. If they can pull it up, they will. Sorry.
Well, what I've done is I'm presenting for the general fund a forecast for this quarter that we just completed. So January, February, and March. And what I did was I compared actuals this quarter to last year's actuals, as well as I did a forecast for the year. So for 2021 in total for the year versus our budget. So from a very high level, I like to first report that we are in very good financial shape. The businesses and our tax revenues are very stable and actually growing over last year. And they're much better than what we anticipated in our budget. We anticipated some continuing depression because of COVID, but thankfully we are not seeing that in the actual numbers. So from a very high level, I'm looking at revenue in the general fund, a forecast for 2021 of 12.5 million versus our budget of 11.8 million. So right now, and it's early in the year and we'll know more as the year goes. So 3 months from now, we'll have a better picture. But right now I'm anticipating that our revenues for 2021 will actually be better than what we budgeted. Oh, thank you. Could you go? Thank you. Will be better than what we budgeted by $674,000. Now that improvement over what we budgeted is really being driven by large part earned income tax. And earned income tax this first quarter of 21 versus last year 2020, our earned income tax is $183,000 better than last year, which is phenomenal. And the first quarter last year was pre-COVID. So that was January, February, March. I expect the year to be around $500,000 better than what we have in the budget. And it's really due to strong employment and wage growth. We're seeing both. We're seeing employment in the township being better than last year, and we're seeing wages improving over last year. And it's looking like it's really going to be on par with 2019. So 2019, we came in right around 5.9 million, and I'm forecasting right now for 2021 at 5,831,000. So that's all good news. So the main takeaway from revenue is the first quarter actual to last year first quarter actual. We are down, but it's really timing items. So I'm not concerned about that. And for 21 forecast, the total year, it looks very positive. If we look at expenses, expenses, the same thing. I did a comparison of this quarter's actual 2021 versus last year 2020. And then I did the same thing with the expenses for the total year. And everything, there's timing items were actually better than last year's spending the first quarter versus last year by 180,000. But again, I think that's in reverse as the year happens because of just timing with capital purchases primarily and spending on headcount. But we do have two areas that do concern me in our expenses. And the one I'm expecting that our information technology is going to be over budget by 44,000. And this is being driven by, we really have increased our focus this year over what security we have in place for cyber attacks. In the past, we had security in place and we had training, but this year we really ramped it up with two-factor verification and other tools that really will put us in best practices industry-wide, government and private industry. So that was a big jump for us, and we're implementing it as it goes. Did somebody hear something? Is everybody okay?
Sorry, that was my son.
Oh, he really liked that security comment. Wow, really cool. I thought it would have been an Eagles comment, but he likes security. Okay. So it looks like we're going to have a little additional spending because of the implementation of that. But I think the township will be in a much better position on knowing that our data and our information is secure from outside threats. The other item is in the police line. It looks like we'll be over budget by 77,000, and that's a result of the settlement agreement. So the agreement between the union and the township has come to terms, or is close to becoming the terms. And as a result of that, we didn't have anything in the budget for factoring in the impact of that until it was decided what it would be. So right now, I'm expecting that will be a cost on the on that line item. So in total, I'm looking at the year for 2021 general fund actually to be $553,000 better than we budgeted. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the main takeaways, as I indicated, we're in great financial position. Next quarter, I'll give an update on the general fund as well as a feather in the sewer plant, since the sewer plant will have completed the WIP project and will understand the impacts to that financially, as well as we'll have a better understanding on the insurance recovery on the flood damage. So just looking at the general fund now, we're in great financial position. The 21 forecast for the year over the 21 budget, I think we're going to be favorable. We'll be able to look at it again in 3 months to be able to understand better what does that mean, and if the board and Sandra want to take some of that money and spend it this year or feather it into next year's budget cycle, which we'll be doing in July, August, September. That'll all be choices that could be made. And on the expense side, I will be seeing the same thing in 3 months. We'll have another look at that. But right now, the expenses seem very well controlled, except for those two line items that I indicated. We do have pressure because of two things that happened during the first quarter. Does anybody have any questions? Does your son, Catherine, have a question?
No.
No? Okay.
I had a question, but I lost my train of thought.
But you can take a moment if you like. I love numbers.
Can you go back up to the slide before this? When you were talking about
Earned income tax?
I think you're saying it in terms of the unfavorable PYR, and you're not expecting it to increase in the second quarter. That you're saying that because whatever you're taking care of in the first quarter will not repeat itself in the second quarter?
Yeah, on revenue side, I think what I mentioned, revenues were actually unfavorable versus this quarter in 21 versus last year, 2020 first quarter. We're actually less than what we collected last year by 155,000. And I'm not alarmed by that because in the areas that we are under last year, they're all in timing items. So one is the state aid for recycling grant. So we got the money, I think it was in April, and prior year we got it in March. So it's reflected in last year's number, but it's not reflected in this year's number yet. So that's a timing item. Another one is zoning and land development. Last year, the first quarter, we just had an insane amount of activity that continued through the year, but it was really insane the first quarter. And talking to Dan Quimby, when I pulled this together, he said his activity level is at a higher rate the second quarter of this year over the first quarter. So I think that's a timing item. So if you take the timing items out of those two items and we see earned income tax being a lot more than last year, and I'll track that monthly to see if that changes. But if it follows the trend from the last 6 months in the last year, I don't see it going down, that we will have a favorable revenue position in the general fund of about $500,000. Does that answer it, Catherine?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I love numbers. No.
You know, one more question in terms of the information technology. Is that going to continually increase where we might have to budget more for it?
I think we'll know better in 3 months, but I would guesstimate off the top of my head about half that number, about 20,000 of it will come back down in 2022. So yeah, we'll have to have some more money dedicated to that line item if we want to continue where we're at in IT into 2022, but it won't be adding to the budget by the number I'm showing for a variance in next year. Good question. You're welcome.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Did any other commissioners have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Dave. That was a great report. Of course, we're all happy to have that favorable outcome. We were very prudent planners, just making sure that COVID did not continue into this year's budget, but it looks like we'll have some great decision making to make it this year's budget time.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Okay, it looks like up next is Van's Planning and Zoning Report.
Thanks, Sandra. Hello, everyone. Many of these items are holdovers from last month, so I will go through them briefly and announce sort of the.
Van, can I ask that if it is a holdover from last month that you just skip it unless the commissioner has a question or there's some new info, just due to the length of the meeting?
Give it the new info.
Thanks, Van.
I'll be quick. I promise you, if not interrupted, I can do this in 2 minutes. Zoning Hearing Board, WB Homes, that was approved. Next step is to go to the Planning Commission, and that will be held in 2 days. The 17 townhouses will be looked at by them and continue into the land development phase in the next few months. Next, Liberty Gas, this I will skip. This was announced last month and will be heard on the 25th of May. Shops of Upper Gwynedd, I will skip. You just heard 2 hours of that. We don't need to say anything more. ZHB 2104 Hunter Road, that was heard. The decision has been postponed until the 25th. I think it's fair to say there was considerable neighborhood interest in that application. 2105 Geisele, announced last month, will be heard on the 25th. Roosevelt Court, you know the status. It's been approved by the Planning Commission. It's in the production drawing series and final agreement phase. 2816 Morris Road, it's in Worcester. It's on this because neighbors of Upper Gwynedd or residents in Upper Gwynedd have been notified by Worcester. The hearing began and has been continued to June 7th. 593 Tesla, should be an S in there, announcement. This is just an announcement. We said last month there was nothing new. This month there is something new. They refiled, they've amended their drawings. They're going to comply with the conditional use. And in perhaps 3 or 4 months, we'll see charging stations at the Wawa store. Amity Lane was heard and decided by the zoning hearing board. That was approved. One new one, sorry, was just added today. 1 Ivy Lane, a side yard variance. It'll go in as ZHB 2107, 1 Ivy Lane, a residential variance. Are there questions? 2 minutes, I think.
That was really good, Van. Good job.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Isaac is up next with our engineering report.
Thanks, Andrew. Good evening, everybody.
Sandra, before you go on, Van,
Yes.
I have a question. It's a simple question. And on the just for my own education, where you have the very first one says 20 zoning hearing board 20-07, does that mean it's from the year 2020, whereas the next one, ZHB 21-03, means 2021?
That's exactly correct, Catherine. It actually was filed in 2020. They asked for a 6 months continuance in order to meet with the neighbors. So they get the 2020 number, but they really only became active in I guess it was March of this year.
And each one where it says 03, 04, 05, that's when the numbers that come up to the zoning hearing board?
Yeah, we just number them in the order that they're filed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. A couple of items just to highlight on the engineering front for everyone this evening. One is for the 2021 road program. It's actively in construction. You may see them working out there right now on Broad Street. They've just about finished all their work for the ramps on Moyer Boulevard. And obviously Moyer and Broad will be the streets that get paved once they complete the ramp work. So after Moyer and Broad, they'll be moving to Mendham Station and the Pines as part of that contract for the ramp work. So we'll continue to keep everybody up to date on where they're going to be, kind of like a 2-week outlook. And I know Megan Weaver's posting the updates on the social media accounts as well. For the MS4 program, the end of the annual reporting period is the end of June. So that's coming up for this year, which, following that, we'll put together the annual report for the DEP that's due in the fall. One of the last items for the annual cycle is to have a short public presentation. So we'll look to plan to have that as part of the June meetings. And we'll keep it brief and to the point for everybody. But appreciate the help with staff for all the different items that we're tasked to compile throughout the year. So we'll continue to prepare that for the DEP submittal. And then the final item I just wanted to highlight for tonight for the Haynes Run Stream Bank. I know there's 2 grants that we have before the commission tonight, the commissioners as well tonight. We had the one last month. To give just a refresher on kind of the phases that we're looking at, it is a larger project. So we have grants going in for some of the design work. Other grants are focused on construction and survey. So put all together, hopefully we hear good news from all of them, and we're able to piece it together to take care of most of the costs that are planned with that improvement project along the stream near the treatment plant. We've included our report with other engineering projects ongoing, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I don't see any questions. Thanks so much, Isaac, for that report. If someone does have a question, just interrupt me. Moving on, we have the staff reports, the public meeting minutes, and from the 12th and the 20th to go on to the consent agenda. And we are up to our mission statement discussion. So Commissioner Carter, did you want to kick off this discussion?
Sure. As you know, I've been looking at our mission statement for the township, where I think that we need to take a look at it and revamp it to be more inclusive of the diversity that Upper Gwynedd shows. Recently, I was at the Upper Gwynedd Township Fire Departments, where they had also revamped their mission statement. And I listened to their process and what they went through. And I asked Eric, the Chief Geiger, if he wouldn't mind, him and his staff, or whoever worked on it. It was a couple people that worked on it from his staff, and how they presented it to the board of the Gwynedd Township Fire Department, and if they wouldn't mind discussing it with us so that we can see what they went through and the why, as to why they even thought that their mission statement needed to be changed. And I think that's where I left it at, is the why. Why do I think the township's mission statement needs to be changed? But more importantly, for all of us to take a look and, I started this conversation back in June, where I asked the Board of Commissioners to just take a look at it and think about how we could improve the statement to be more inclusive of our township and the diversity that our township shows. Chief here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, I see you now.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good evening, all.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. So I heard the the build up that Commissioner Carter had said there. I guess the first thing that I'll start off with is we recognized mid last year that the mission statement the Upper Gwynedd Fire Department had at the time reflected stuff that or a sentiment that occurred something around 2012 when we had an issue with at the time the treasurer. So administration back then decided to build a mission statement that reflected an issue that was going on then that we needed to project to the rest of the to the township and to the public and everybody that would see that, specifically with grants and things like that. That was back in 2012. Well, things obviously, the world evolves, things change, and things happen, and that mission statement that was there, while it did reflect the good points of the fire department and what we did, we felt as though it didn't reflect the current 2020 fire department and how we wanted to be viewed as a collective. So in the interest of getting everybody or as much involvement as I possibly can from the members, while I have 60 plus members, I can't have a committee with 60 people on it. Obviously, we can, the heartache that would bring. So we picked it. We asked for volunteers that would be willing to sit on this committee to sit down and discuss this. And we got a handful of them. And ultimately, it came down to myself, Amanda Hode, who was my chief engineer, and one of our firefighters, Sam Lee, that sat down one night for it was probably about 4 or 5 hours, 4.5 hours or so to discuss where we're at, what they felt the department, the state of the department was, and how they felt the current mission statement reflected that. My specific questions to them were, you know, it was I'll say this, it was projected the entire department to whoever wanted to volunteer. But I was very cognizant of the fact that I didn't want a very specific demographic to have on this committee to reflect the 2021 or 2020 at the time frame. So these two members volunteered. Sam is a Asian American, and Amanda is part of the gay and lesbian community, and they both are very involved and heavily involved in our department. So I thought it was a great opportunity for us to get together and understand the entirety of the department. So my first question to them was, is there any way at all, and both of them have average 12 or so years within the department, have you at any time felt as though the department had wronged them in any way, shape, or form, or they felt out of place or anything like that? Overwhelmingly, response was no, that was not the case. And I was like, okay, well, now let's put that into paper and put that into onto the paper and make that black and white. So, a couple of things that we did find was that, I did some research before doing this and getting, to be able to drive a discussion about it, and found that, there's a couple of things that you want to look at when you're doing this. And it's, the mission statement is going to be the reason why people get up and they want to be involved. Like it's something that is really, it's impactful, and it's the reason why. It needs to be clear, and also needs to be easy to remember. So, a lot of times mission statements and things like that go on in a paragraph form, and they lose their impact because, after 2 or 3 sentences, you don't know what's going on, or you don't remember it. And the people that you're trying to motivate or to impart that onto, they don't have the wherewithal to stand and continue to read all that. So it needs to be clear and concise. So we sat down, we went through that. We went through our old statement, as I said, and the fire department came up with our new mission statement, which I'll just read here real quick, and then kind of put it to the rest of the commissioners if there's any questions regarding how we came about what we decided. But the mission statement that we came up with was: the mission of the Upper Gwynedd Township Fire Department's dedicated professionals is to protect life and property for Upper Gwynedd Township and surrounding communities by fostering a progressive and responsible team providing fire and emergency services with a professionally trained, dedicated, and compassionate volunteer workforce. So all the members, that after we developed that, we also sat down and created the first vision statement and the first values statements that ever in Upper Gwynedd Township Fire Department. We didn't have them before. So Sam, Amanda, and I created them. And then we put it to the rest of the membership in a meeting, presented it to them, let them know how we came up with it, why we came up with it, how we felt as though, being as diverse and inclusive as we possibly could, and putting that down on paper was important to the administration and to the department. And we, with the unanimous vote, all the members elected to bring these 3 new statements into our business rules and how we do things. So we made it a point to vote on that in the board meeting, and everybody, and it's now ingrained in our constitution and bylaws as well. So I hope that answers it, brings the things that you were hoping that I would bring, Commissioner Carter. And if there's any questions, I'd certainly see if I can answer them.
Do any board members have any questions for Chief Geiger? Go ahead, Ruth.
Yeah, hi, Chief. Can you know off the top of your head, how many volunteers do you have?
We have about 60.
60, and how many of them represent minority representation?
This specific number, I check every minority category that there is within my department. So we cover and we have representation of every, like I said, every category. But I would say probably 15 at least of that 60, 15 or 20 at least of that 60 represent any of the minority categories. Yes.
Is that increasing over the years from when you started? I'm just saying, do you find that has that you have been able to get out there and to appeal to encourage, minority residents in our township, or can they come from outside the township, or do they all have to be township residents?
So the first part of that question, it certainly has increased. There's no doubt about that. In years past, there's a lot of different demographics, and that comes into play with as people move into the township, and the township evolves as well. The second part of that question is no, you do not have to be a resident of Upper Gwynedd proper. We allow members. Actually, we really don't have any restriction of any municipality as it is concerned, because we have people that run with our QS program that live in Limerick. We have people that run with us that live in Cheltenham. So we bring members from all over, and I like to think that that's indicative of the culture and what we have within the fire department, and the word of mouth in public safety and the fire service is huge. So that people are coming in the door, and we put in 21 new members last year, and I've got my 11th interview tomorrow night for somebody this year. So I can't complain when it comes to that, and that's certainly not any one particular demographic that's coming in either. So,
well, that sounds good. Thank you.
No problem.
Chief, I have a question for you. How long have you had the mission and vision implemented?
We voted on it in December's meeting, and it was effective and written into our constitutional bylaws on January 1st. So,
and did you also set some type of a review cycle for both of those to make sure that they are current and really living up to what the fire department stands for?
I have not, but I like the idea. It probably would be something that would cycle around. I don't know if an annual basis, that would probably be too tight, but maybe we do, the chief and the president are elected on a 4-year basis. Mm-hmm. So, that would probably be a good time on a cycle of, election cycle or administration to do that. So I appreciate that suggestion. We'll absolutely I'll bring that back to the rest of the team.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing all of that, Chief Geiger. I guess the next question, this is a discussion item. How would the board like to proceed regarding the mission statement?
You mean our mission statement? Okay, we're back to us.
The purpose of this discussion was for us. Eric was just sharing, what they did in the firehouse recently as a point of reference.
Well, I still would like to just discuss it and to move into forming some type of committee to take a look at it and revamp it for our generation.
Okay. Do you have ideas of who should serve on that committee? Would you include staff on the committee?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So I think what we're looking for now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Catherine.
You know, representative not of the staff, but, you know, with the police department, maybe even some of the new committees that we have, the HRC, the environmental committees, you know, just a wide variety. You know, like Eric said, not maybe to start off in terms of that brainstorming and to bring it down to a smaller committee to actually do the work.
Okay, so do we have a consensus of the board to move forward with like a committee review of the mission statement?
Do we need to a so move thing and vote on it? I'm not sure where we are here with this. This is just a discussion. Just a discussion. Well, I think it's a great idea. I really do. This is certainly the time and the climate out there and everything else. I think it's really important for us to be a diverse and talk about these issues and have a as Catherine said, to have a 21st century that reflects that, you know, our values and what, you know, what we want to as a board of commissioner, what we feel should the mission be for us. And I think it's important. I think it's a statement. It says how we feel and what our values are, and that would hopefully be transformed into what, you know, and that, you know, that we could make an impact on our own community.
So we would come up, Sandra, you would come up with a more concrete plan, how to get all these different areas together, like how to get a representative from, like, do we want to make it, do we want to say that we want to specifically make sure that there's one person from each group, each organization, or should it be more of a, just putting that out there, you know, to the different groups when they meet throughout the month of May or June? You know, if you'd like to come, let us know. And then once we have the list compiled of how many people, then we could actually set a date and move forward like that. Like, would it be, what were you thinking, Catherine? Were you thinking
Pretty
just
much that. I wouldn't want it to mandate that each department had to have somebody on, because that's not what it's about. But to ask for volunteers from the different departments and see how many, you know, were interested in being involved in the work, in the work. And then from that committee, maybe like I said, a larger committee where you're doing most of the brainstorming and you're looking at other groups' mission statements, looking at other townships' mission statements, and then coming together, and then maybe from that group, a smaller group to do the actual work of the writing and putting it all together.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And so then, you know, Sandra, what it could just be put out to everybody.
Yeah, I could
Who's
send an email
interested.
to all the boards and commission members, to our staff, and through the department heads, determine who from our staff would like to participate. And then we could have a big brainstorming session. I think that's what Catherine's envisioning. And then a committee that's created just to sort of take that session and actually do the writing, like Eric mentioned in his.
Catherine, do you want to take the lead on that? Like, do you want to?
Sure.
Since it's your idea and you definitely feel most passionate about it, I think it's a great idea, and maybe you could like spearhead it all and just keep updating us like how it's forming and what's going on with it.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I see, Eric, that you had Amanda joined us as well. So thank you very much for joining us for this topic. And I think we have our consensus of the board to move forward. Martha, I didn't hear from you, but I thought you were going with it.
Yeah, my head's nodding.
Okay, yeah, we'll work towards that over the upcoming months. Okay, anything else on that topic?
Amanda got here?
Yeah, I can see she's logged in, but yeah.
Amanda?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for the invite, guys.
I appreciate it. You have any comments or anything before we move on?
No, just to piggyback off what Eric said of, the fire department being pretty diverse. Personally, I belong to 4 different fire and EMS agencies, and Upper Gwynedd is definitely one of the more diverse and very much accepting and all around, open to just about anyone joining, which is absolutely great for our township.
Can I ask you why you thought the fire department needed to update their mission statement?
I know it was something that Eric, brought to our attention as the executive board, and I honestly support it as being one of the minority members of the department. But I also used to be a teacher, and I ran a diversity committee for students. So to piggyback off that, I just kind of helped, put what Eric wanted to convey, which is that we are a very, open and diverse family, really, and put it into words so that people understood that, even though this is, a male-dominated field and it's very, trade-oriented, we really do welcome everybody, and that needs to be in writing, and people need to know that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great, thank you so much, everyone. And if we've heard everything on this topic, could we move on, Commissioner Carter?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Amanda.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Okay, moving on to items 18, 19, and 20. These are authorizations of the township solicitor to sign assessment appeal stipulation agreements. Each of those agreements are in your packet, and I would like to move these to the consent agenda, if that's okay with the commissioners. Okay, great. I think we just have the 3 of you left, Commissioner Carter, Similaro, and Hall. I don't see Commissioner Damsker anymore. Okay, so item number 21 would move to the consent agenda as well. And then up next is resolution 20-21. Megan went ahead and preemptively prepared this in case we want to extend the outdoor dining opportunities that we had in the township during COVID. So it would just be another extension of that resolution. Did anyone have any questions about that? I do know the governor's, I think, recently put out a statement that all restrictions would be lifted by May 30th or 31st. And also, yeah, also if we get to 70% vaccination rate, that even the mask mandate would end. So now that we have that update, I could ask Megan to prepare this resolution to be, ending as of May 30th or whatever that date is with the governor. Or Lauren, would the board be able to go further than that, though? I think that the governor, from everything I've seen, has said, if local municipalities want to do something more, we can. So is this an option where the board could still continue the outdoor dining opportunities past that date, or?
The board can. The original intent behind this was because of the restrictions that were being placed on these businesses to kind of give them an opportunity to not feel that pinch quite as much. Like I said, they were originally tied to the emergency, but there's nothing to stop the board from saying that they want to give another 3 months or so to allow these businesses to continue to operate as they have been, perfectly within your discretion.
I have to say that I was, when I first read this, I had the initial thought that you brought up, Sandra, that was like, oh, well, things are now ramping back down, and it looks like we're going to even get to the point where we're talking about maskless wearing again. And I thought, maybe this isn't necessary, but then I was thinking about it. I don't think it could hurt to extend it. I think that our restaurants definitely, like all restaurants, took a hit during this COVID. And if we can provide any opportunity for additional business for them, if we can encourage, especially as it's getting warmer, if we can encourage people to sit outside more, because that is, ultimately the safest, why not? I don't think it's really been any hardship to our township to have these accommodations. So then in hindsight, I thought, well, why don't we approve it for a little longer?
I'm going to agree with Denise also. I think it's great that we have outdoor dining.
Okay, well, we will, I don't know, Catherine, what your opinion is, but are you okay with this, just including this for your action at the next meeting as is and not amending it?
Yeah, I agree as is. I'm still only wearing my mask, so. Breathe on me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll still wear my mask too, but.
Me too.
Sandra, I would just recommend, because the governor is going to be lifting those restrictions, that we do tweak the language of the ordinance a little bit to reference that.
Okay.
So I'll put that together and I'll get that over to you.
If you could do that, that'd be great. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, and then the next, oh, sorry. Okay, the next two items, number 23 and 24 will both go on the consent agenda, if everyone's okay with that.
Okay.
Okay. As well as number 25 for the emergency declarations. And Lauren, here is another question. Would we be able to stop doing these then? I know the last one we have for approval on this is May 24th.
So there's been a
Why
lot
not?
of talk about what's going to be happening at the state level. The reason that we need to do this is because of funding availability. What a couple of places have done is just do a more open-ended declaration that essentially ties the local declaration to the governor's declaration. I believe his current one is scheduled to expire on the 22nd. So it's not clear whether or not there'll be another extension of that, but we could always just kind of, again, tweak the language of that to just leave it more open-ended so we don't have to continue re-upping it every week.
That would be delightful.
No problem. I'll get you a draft over.
Thank you. Okay, and at this point, I think I need to turn this next item over to Vice President Hull or Commissioner Carter, because this is a decision item for the police contract.
Let's see.
We're at item number 6.
Yep, number 20. Sure, I'll read it.
I just want to point out to the board that we have some police officers joining the call, which I'm really glad to see. Our officers joining in tonight for this. So we might want to just give them a moment.
They're coming on?
Yes, they are. I saw a bunch of them just joined. Foster, do we have any additional officers that we're waiting on to join?
There are no additional officers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Commissioner Carter. You can go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that we're extremely happy, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, that we're extremely happy, of course, to be able to settle the contract with our Gwynedd Police Department, who, of course, are valued member of our team and our organization, and that we're very happy that while they are receiving salary increases and increased post-retirement health care, that the township received improved language for new hires on disability and the first time ever healthcare contributions and increased pension contributions. So I just wanted to say that, it was a road we traveled and back and forth, but we're very happy that we came to this conclusion and that we can finally put this to rest.
Great. And then I think we need a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Motion to approve the police department contract for years 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Do we have any board comment?
Yay.
No board comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Whew.
Great.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you. Thanks to the Board of Commissioners and to our officers that joined the call. I'm really glad to see you on here, and we're glad to move forward with this new contract.
Yes. And are we doing this now or are we doing it At the next board meeting, the recognition.
The recognition will be happening at the next meeting. Thank goodness. It would be rough to get recognized at 9:34. So Mr. Testa will be at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Dansker is no longer on the call, so I think I'll just handle her one decision item and pass it over to you, Commissioner Hull. So as you can see on the agenda, Public Works Week is coming up May 16th through the 26th, or 22nd. So we wanted a moment to recognize that team, and we have an awesome resolution in the packet, which, sorry, I wasn't quite prepared, but I can go ahead and read that. So let me do that. So here we go. We are asking the board tonight to pass resolution 22-21, which recognizes May 16th through the 22nd as National Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the residents of Upper Gwynedd Township. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it's in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Upper Gwynedd Township to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved, I'm not Liz, but that the president of the Upper Gwynedd Township Board of Commissioners designates the week of May 16th through 22nd as Public Works Week, and we urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees to recognize the substantial contributions they make protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Do any commissioners want to make a motion to approve resolution 21-2021?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Do we have any board comment? No. Do we have any Sarah Priebus comment?
Another item. But
Okay,
I do
sorry.
have a comment. I agree wholeheartedly with this resolution that and I love how it listed the engineers and the laborers and the equipment operators and our wastewater professionals. There's so much that goes into public works in our country and in our community, and they are really the fabric of our community. They really keep things going for us. So just wanted to make that comment.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that we are publicizing this a little bit because the Public Works team is always behind the scenes. They're always in the background. So even when I saw this on our agenda, I said, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. So thank goodness we're celebrating this, and we're definitely going to have to do a couple things to celebrate this. I know that Willard would have been here, but he's away for a couple weeks and taking care of some business. And so thank you so much to all of our public works staff. We could not survive without you, and you make all of us look grand. So thank you. So with all that being said, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Aye, so have it.
Great. And that will be the end of the decisions that you make this evening. Next up is just that I'll ask for your approval next week for the ratification of the consortium bid advertisement for the heating oil. As the action memo states, we are taking over this bid for about 10 communities in Montgomery County. From the consortium, another community did it, but then they no longer use the same type of heating system. So we have an advertisement, and we'll just need you to ratify that. And then at a future meeting, you'll also be asked to vote on the results of the bid. Any questions on that? All right, and now it's Miss Priebus's debut, Mrs. Priebus, I guess, technically. So we have a discussion item tonight about the carnival. We don't have to make a decision tonight. We have, I think, Sarah, until June 1st, right?
I think we should have it.
Oh boy, oh boy. Commissioner Carter with a surprise opinion.
How do you really feel, Commissioner Carter? How do you really feel?
I mean, I saw carnivals going up today when I was driving out.
Really?
And yeah, Andorra has one set for this weekend. I mean, all the schools are opening in September, and I think it would be a welcome back to school celebration kind of thing. When I saw it on the agenda, I was like, yep, we should have it. I still have my mask on, but we should have it.
What do you think, Martha?
I love the idea. I think it's, especially it's September, so we had the whole summer. And I'll still wear my mask also because it's the first year I didn't get a cold. So I think if nothing else, that's a positive for me. And I think it's great. I think if they're already doing carnivals around the area, you know, let's go and do it. It's a positive and it's fun.
I third their sentiments. Exactly. I think we can do it.
I will be the Debbie Downer that makes sure we follow every safety protocol and works with Skelly's to be providing the safest carnival that we can. I did note that Skelly's will be sanitizing. They have a whole sanitizing plan. They have a plan for their employees. I felt so much better about that when I read that. So thank you, Sarah, for including all of that information.
You're welcome. You guys are making me easy. Look, I have all my notes written down and now I even have to read them.
Sometimes there's a benefit to being towards
they
the
have
end of
hand sanitizer stations and stuff like that throughout the park.
Yes, they have all of that, Catherine. We're going to mandate masks. They're going to set up sanitation of equipment, of their equipment, sanitation stations, and they're going to provide special spatial markers if we still need them for people standing in lines, things like that. They also talked about a possible guest flow plan, meaning walking traffic can only go certain ways, or we spread stuff out so we can have wider paths for people to walk. So that was a lot. That was just the main stuff that they discussed. So yeah, they're really willing to work with us with whatever we want if we're going to do this.
Yeah, I saw 2 carnivals being set up. That's that big carnival over there by Andorra Shopping Center, St. George or St. Gregory's. They have it every year. If you ever go out that way, they have it every year. They didn't have it last year, but I saw them setting up and I was surprised. That was the first one, but they said the big one in the Greek Orthodox out in Upper Darby is scheduling to have theirs this year too.
Yeah, and I know Limerick, I reached out to Limerick Fire Department. They're having theirs as well in May, the end of May. So I reached out to them and just waiting to hear back if they're doing anything special on that. So we can always incorporate that too, so.
I will be wearing gloves for all my money counting duties.
Yeah. We got little baby gloves for our kids at school. They are so
cute, Catherine. That's cute. All right, well, I hear a consensus that we don't need to add this to the agenda again. So it sounds like this is very exciting. The Upper Gwynedd Township Carnival is on for September 9th through 12th. Is that right, Sarah?
That is correct, yes.
Hey, that's the same weekend as our coffee with the commissioners.
We're going to have to change our coffee with the commissioners to make it at the carnival.
Okay.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Okay, great. Well, I just, to note the record, I see that Commissioner Damsker has rejoined the meeting on her phone. So thank you so much, Sarah. And you can feel free to log off now.
Okay, thank you guys.
No, you
Good
can
night.
stay with the rest of us. How she
All right, so yeah, I have been watching.
You didn't have to read all your stuff, but you have to stay on.
I'll go read it to my kids. How about that? Thank you guys so much.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
Good
Yeah.
night, Sarah.
Okay.
So Sandra, where are we? Did somebody read the resolution for the
Commissioner Damsker,
Public Works?
We are moving on to item number 31, which is the golf contract for the golf outing.
Okay.
So for everyone's knowledge, we hold the golf outing traditionally each year in June, but this year we switched it to October due to COVID, and I think we're looking to continue in October. So it's very early in October, which should be good, hopefully, knock on wood, weather-wise. So that'll be for your decision at the next meeting, as well as the equipment rental and labor bid award for the stormwater projects. This is a general contract that we make every year for all the different projects that we do each year for stormwater. Did anyone have any questions about that? We also, hopefully by your next meeting, which I think we should, we'll be able to have the person's name on the agenda that we're looking to hire for our park and rec labor. Right now they're going through the background clearances. So that will be an item to hold for that meeting. And then in the wastewater realm, we have a couple payments to approve. And I'm blanking because it's late and my brain doesn't work as well. Do we usually put these on the consent agenda or the payments stay off the consent?
I believe you discussed them tonight and then do put them on the consent agenda. And then the actual bill list you leave out of the consent agenda.
The actual what?
The actual bill list, your items 30.
Oh, right, yes. Okay. Thanks, Lauren. Yes. So items 34 and 35, actually item 34 would go to the consent agenda. Item 35 is a new capital purchase. We usually keep these off the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions about the panel view performance modules for wastewater treatment? And then next up, 36 and 37 are two great, awesome grant applications that Isaac's team is going to be putting together and submitting for us. Isaac, did you want to say a few words about these applications? Did you have anything to add from earlier?
Sure, Sandra, just that, yeah, these are both DCED grants that in the memo I mentioned they're due in June, but they're actually due on the 31st of May. So either way, our meetings this month, we would look to approve the resolutions to go into their applications. And they would each kind of focus on a portion of the work that we would have planned to analyze the stream and then design and construct the improvements that we're looking to do there.
And hopefully I keep making a joke, and I hope I can keep making this joke for like eternity, that we're 1 for 1, right, Isaac?
That's right.
Oh, now I think we have like 2 floating out there in the world. I want to make sure we're like 5 for 5 and just keep going with that trend.
I hear you. I'm with you on that. Yep.
No pressure. No pressure. Okay, so those will be for decision at the next meeting, and then we would have the approval of the opening paid invoices, and that is it. Commissioner Hull, I will turn it over to you.
Oh, that's perfect, because I had 2 little things, but they're really quick. They're really short. They're so short. I just wanted to remind everybody to check your mailboxes. Did everybody get this? It's our newsletter. So check it out. It's fantastic, like it always is. There's lots of information, but there's also lots of news for the things that are coming up. Everybody's tired. I know you're like, move it on, lady. Okay, but please check that out. And then the other cool thing that I just learned about today in the paper is that we had our Kindness Day on May 1st, our Unity for Kindness Day, which was wonderful. And I just learned that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania has been doing this since 2019. And they actually modeled their Kindness Day after Mr. Rogers. And he had a day called a 143 day, because that was a little code he did with kids. So those numbers were for the words, I love you. Those were the number of letters in each of those words. So he would call it a 143 day. And that was a day when you would do something kind for someone. And so we are having it here in Philadelphia on the weekend of the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd. So it's a kindness. It's keep on coming together to create kindness in our community. I just wanted to let everybody know about that. It's a really cool thing. Anybody else have anything else?
Nope.
No, everybody is done. Okay. With that being said, I would like to call for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved.
There's my gap.
Honestly,
good night, everybody.
Yeah, my iPad died on me. It's been on so long, for so long that it died. So that's why I had to dial in. All right, guys.